we're here today to talk about Agentic AI. Kind of what is it? How can it help you? So before we get into that though, let's talk about who I am. So my name's Lewis Prince. I'm a senior AI engineer here at Purple Frog Systems. We're a data consultancy based in the Midlands, in between kind of Birmingham and the Welsh border. And we do anything from data ingestion, data visualization, ETLs, working in Fabric, Synapse, Power BI, all the way up to doing agentic AI, AI applications, predictive analytics as well. So really, the end-to-end data product is kind of what we offer. And I've worked in AI and data space for about 8 years now, with varying experience across very different sectors. I would say 4 or 5 of those years were based in the finance sector as a quant. So I was doing a lot of modeling over financial data. I've also been a Microsoft AI MVP for the past year and a bit now. And for anyone unfamiliar with what that is, I'm one of 16 in the UK. We're recognised by Microsoft for our kind of our technical knowledge, especially within the Microsoft tech stack, as well as our contribution to the community in terms of giving talks, sharing knowledge, writing blogs, making videos to share knowledge and be fountains of knowledge in that regard. And off the back of that as well, via Microsoft, I'm a certified data scientist and AI engineer associate, if I get my words out, sorry. Again, certifications that I meet a certain standard in terms of what Microsoft has for AI engineers, and what it has for data scientists to do more AI stuff or do more predictive analytics stuff, which is kind of where the ML side comes in. So if you want to connect me, feel free. You'll find my LinkedIn there. On my LinkedIn, you will also find links to my blog. I blog under the pseudonym of the Data Rhino. So if you're interested, look in there, see my blogs and see what else I share on those sites and on my LinkedIn. Plugs feel free. And also I've put a link there via the QR code to the Purple Frog website. If you're interested in what I say today, there's a lot of content on there, as well as the Frog blog. So outside of AI, I blog a lot through the Purple Frog blog, but also my colleagues blog everything from ETL processes, Fabric hints and tips, so anything really to do with data, and sometimes the wider tech community as well. You'll find blogs on there, so also well worth a visit. So let's get into this. So the plan today, I'm going to set a baseline for what AI is, just to make sure everyone's on the same footing, and give my opinion on what a great definition of AI is, and dig a bit deeper, just to make sure we're all on the same understanding there. After done that, we'll talk about what agentic AI is then. And most importantly, how does that differ from the AI we formally recognise from our day-to-day use as it is now? And then we talk about how agentic AI is being used, why you should use it, and then I will talk through some use cases for your business, as well as live demonstrations. So I've got a couple of demos. So the first one will be after what agentic AI is. So I'm going to give a live example of that. So a very quick comparing ChatGPT to what an agentic AI process would be for a similar use case. And at the end, we will go through an explanation of the tech stack I'm going to suggest using and I've used for demos today, as well as 2 demos of what hopefully will be use cases which you will find applicable, or will see applications in your business within what I show you. So let's kick off. What is AI? So this is going to be the first poll. I did explain earlier there'll be 2 or 3 polls for this. I think 2 actually, and a couple of questions as well. So I do want your interaction, please. The first question, just out of interest, how many of you are already using AI in your business? So if you could answer the polls on there, I'll give you a couple minutes or a minute. I'll answer as well, because you have to answer to see the results. Still a bit of people to answer. 20, it's about 10, 11 people. I'll give it a couple of seconds. So the vast majority are using AI already. what I'm seeing there. Last 10 seconds. Not sure. What do you mean by not sure, Amber? This is going to lead us to my next question. So I've got two questions following this. In terms of the first one, being for the not sures. What do you mean? It's just write a quick question in there. What you're not sure about there, Amber, and we'll try and address that now. So just general ChatGPT use we talk about there. So kind of asking just general questions about day-to-day work. Okay. So I would say I think that would be the use case for a lot of people, where the business is not specifically saying to use ChatGPT, but the workers are using it. So I think AI would be using your business. It's around. I would say it's pretty rare that people aren't using it, which leads me on to my next question for everyone. If we could put in the chat just an example of what you are using AI for, then for the people that are applied yes, just to give examples, and just to get a chat going in terms of how AI is already being used by people, and that'll lead into my example of what AI is. So everyone just put in the chat how they're using AI, just a sentence or even a couple words. Summary Q&A, okay. Chatbots, yeah. ChatGPT, yeah. So for meeting summaries, Adam, we'll be talking about the Teams functionality, where you get it to kind of act as a minute taker. Yeah, so I think really useful. So if we'll maybe bring that back up at the end, because that's quite a useful bit of use case. Language translations, text summarization. Yeah, it's for idea generation as well. So cool. I think we've got a lot of good use cases there in terms of what people are using AI for. I think it'll make more sense when I get to how to define the difference between what I design as normal AI for this talk and agentic AI, in terms of what we're seeing here is using AI to assist you in day-to-day jobs. And that's going to be the key word I'm going to make when we get onto that differentiation. So let's keep that in mind. In terms of the examples we've got here, I'll bring them back up later on and show you examples of how an agentic AI solution would differ in the situations here. Okay, so AI, how would I define it? So I always, when I talk to clients, I talk to people, I do these talks, define AI as a simulation of human intelligence processes by machines. So the key word there is processes. And why I put so much importance in that is if we want to define what human intelligence is, that's really hard to do. And it's more useful to think of it as a breakdown of many different things, so many different processes. So how we understand spoken words, how we understand visual information, how we kind of learn to talk and learn to do things by trial and error, how we have complex thoughts, how we ideate, how we have creativity. There's many different things which make us intelligent. There's not one whole thing. And that's why I find it really useful to define AI as such, because that comes on to why we have so many different fields and industries that make up AI, because it has to match that human intelligence process. And to kind of put that into a bit of quantification, I've broken down some fields of AI here into certain human intelligence processes to kind of nail that definition home. So for a field of AI called natural language processing, a natural language being English, French, Spanish, any language that is developed naturally over human history. And the human intelligence process there is understanding, producing meaningful language to communicate ideas. So anything to do with the spoken word and the written word. And then machine vision, interpreting visual information. So interpreting what you're seeing, the information on my slides, when you go outside, where you're going to walk, prices on what you're going to buy for lunch. And then the most interesting one, you find a lot of development from reinforcement learning. And this ideally is how we learn from trial and error. So how a baby thinks. And probably the best example of reinforcement learning for the greater good, if you want to call it that. And I don't always like using this example because self-driving cars is not something that most, well, I'll say 99.99% of SMEs, business industries that I talk to are ever going to be interested in building self-driving electric cars. But reinforcement learning can be useful for businesses. And it's the big example of this. And these self-driving cars, when they are taught, it's by trial and error, crashing into things. I'm not going to do that again. Much like a baby, they fall over once, they touch hot iron once, and they learn not to do that again by feedback loops. So that's kind of how reinforcement learning works. So hopefully that's kind of given a great definition and something that we can all get on board with for a definition of AI. Just thumbs up in the chat if everyone's happy with that. Thumbs up. Yep, getting a couple. Okay, cool. So let's move on. So what is agentic AI and how does it differ? On the left of the screen, it's my example of normal AI, as I'm going to call it. On the right, agentic. And I could use two key verbs to differentiate the difference in action between kind of normal AI, your ChatGPTs, to agentic AI. So the first being normal AI assists. And this is kind of what we said about earlier in terms of text summarization, language translations, summarize your meetings. You're giving it one task at a time, and it's helping you out with these certain tasks, doing helping you reach a goal quite quickly, but in a very simple manner. While agentic AI operates, so it can do a lot more for us. It's not just assisting; it's doing whole task flows for us and kind of think by itself. So to kind of give an example of that, for normal AI, we could give it a report and say, explain this report. So the examples in the chat, text summarization, language translations, translate this report for me. Bulk data consolidation can make this report more concise. It all comes down to assisting questions. While agentic AI, in comparison, we'd have that same report, but we can go and say, prepare and send the report every Friday. So we can plumb in the Excel spreadsheets, the stuff in our Azure data warehouses, in our data lakes. We can get to connect to APIs. We can get to connect to APIs and get weather data, for example. And we can schedule that to kind of create reports and send them out every Friday to stakeholders that are interested in getting those reports. So to kind of summarize a bit more deeply, kind of what the difference is after that example, some sentences and quick definitions to kind of go further on that. It's not just responding. So with those assistants examples I gave you, we're asking to summarize the text. It responds. There you go. With agentic AI, it initiates. It gets triggered. So, for example, when an email comes in to a mailbox or a new file is made, when a certain day and time comes around, or certain conditions are met, the AI can come in, look at the data, look at the situations in, make decisions, and then act to reach a goal that they may need to do, to email certain information to people, to write reports, to help us reach our goals. And again, it works across many different steps, not just single tasks. So with the examples we spoke about earlier, it's handling one request at a time, while agentic AI, it plans and executes, and it does a lot more for us when we want to use it. And it can use tools and take action. So instead of only providing recommendations, it can go and get the report, make the recommendations, and sometimes even put these recommendations in place and inform stakeholders of what's going on. So hopefully we can see a lot more powerful, a lot more potential in terms of what we can get out of agentic AI and how it can be used. So to really hammer that home, another real example I'm going to try and show. So if I exit this here, and I want to go to ChatGPT. So an example here, I've grabbed an invoice off the internet. So it's just a random kind of invoice template with information in, and the whole idea is we want to be checking these invoices. So these invoices we're sending out to customers. You've got one person, be it head of finance, a team leader, and a finance team, making sure they're meeting certain requirements. So we could just get AI to assist us, give it this invoice, and get a check. It is a date format the way we want it to be. And does that format match US accounting practices and is currency in dollars? So I've done that, I've sent it off, it'll give us some answers, and then we'll go and put that in place. That is a normal AI kind of response. And instead, what we could do, and I've set up a small piece of Agentic AI where we can send an email with that tagged on. And when I send this, it's going to end up in my mailbox. And it's going to go away. The Agentic AI, when it's sent, will pick up, and we'll go into this later on. It's going to pick up the email's been sent. It's going to grab that invoice, get any information, and then I've already plumbed these questions into the Agentic AI that when stuff does happen, I want to check these things. So to give some recommendations in terms of if that document has passed or not passed, and then push it to us for approval. Now, sometimes it takes a couple of seconds. Sometimes it takes a bit longer than that. So I'm going to check if that's come through yet or not. If it's not, then I will just kind of show how it should look. Which I will do here. So the example earlier, what I've already approved, just because I've spoke a bit longer than I thought I would earlier on. So I'll come through and give some of this. So this one's already approved. It'll send us a team message saying this document process is flagged. This invoice we sent off. This one here. The date is not in the format we wanted. It said everything's in the correct US number format. I've gone US because it was a lot easier to find a US dummy invoice than it was British. So it's all based on US kind of regulations here. And it's pulled out something which does fit US accounting practices, which was picked up in the normal AI as well. But same, we probably should confirm that this is allowed. And then we click approve here or not. Extension to this, we could just get the Agentic AI to approve that itself, the stuff that is okay. Or probably the better solution is for when it is kind of checking these invoices, it flags to us the values to be checked, but it approves everything else itself. So it's kind of, hopefully that's given a quick idea of the difference between a normal AI and Agentic AI with a real example there. So just a quick thumbs up in the chat or any questions at that point before I move on to the next points in the slide. Any questions at this point? Nope. Okay, I will move on then. So how is Agentic AI being used? Where is it being used? Much like all AI, you can use it anywhere. It's hard to give one definitive use case because there's so many. There's so many. There's so many applications, and because there's so many tools you can plug into it, it makes it even harder to give a single definition of where to do it. So literally anywhere where you have a goal, multiple steps, there's some sort of decision making to be done and follow through afterwards where you need to critique maybe the output of a report, or you need to send it to stakeholders rather than the example earlier where you've got a single question or asking for a single prediction. That's where Agentic AI would be a lot more useful than kind of more simple AI, like your ChatGPT's example. So what are some more common use cases? That might be an easier question than where. So really, I kind of break down Agentic AI use cases into kind of three sections. The first being autonomous task execution. So these are just agents kind of doing stuff for us. booking travel, resolving IT tickets, kind of taking those invoices, for example, earlier, processing, seeing errors, and then maybe sending them off and forming that checking process. And I would say a vast majority of business users will have this as 90% of their agentic AI use is making tasks work automatically um, in a very rapid manner by taking advantage of agentic AI. The second being continuous monitoring and decision making. So this is watching data streams and taking actions where stuff changes. So this can be fraud detection. It can be system health. If you are have several databases or data warehouses, and you want to make sure they're still functioning, if it's an on-prem data warehouse, that it's still available, it's still up and running. You could have a heartbeat going to and from, and agentic AI monitoring that, and where, um, and if it's getting a lot more kind of server health statistics back as well, in terms of temperature, kind of how much GPU is being used, how much CPU is being used, and it can monitor those conditions and then give regular updates saying it's getting a bit hot in there. You're at this amount of risk that the server could shut down or the server could have a major fault this time of time. So, example of that kind of use case of agentic AI there, and the final, which is not probably the most applicable unless you're working for the big businesses, is really complex workflow orchestration. So this is having your continuous monitoring, your autonomous task executions agents massively in parallel, working together in a sort of web of knowledge and a web of use cases to achieve an overall goal. So for supply chain optimization, so making sure your warehouses are functioning if it's cold, if it's too hot, if you have like milkshakes or meat stored there, make sure your trucks are getting to the right place at the right time, um, and calling out when they may not meet certain deadlines. So that would be complex workflow orchestration, and it's kind of an amalgamation of the previous 2 points. So why should you use Agentic AI? So I've pulled two kind of reports out here to give statistics on the benefits of using Agentic AI. The first being, if you're an organization, in this Zappy report from, I think, the beginning of this year, midway of this year, 2005. The link's there anyway, if you guys want to take a picture of this slide we've done and look at these reports yourself. They showed that by deploying these AI agents, your productivity, they saw an increase of about 40% for their clients, and their operating costs reducing by 25 to 45% by applying agentic AI. And this is because these workflows are running and they're massively scalable. Agentic AI can be doing the jobs of 4 or 5 people, and so productivity will go up because they're working much more rapidly and more consistently, and so your operating costs go down because you're getting a lot more work done per man hour being put into these tasks. So a really good stat there, as well as this kind of blog down the below as well, so that more broadly, via using AI-driven workflow automation or to make automation. Really tripping over words today. Sorry, let's have a quick drink. You get about 240% return of interest in 12 months of deployment, and that kind of feeds back to the stats earlier, where your increase of productivity and reduction in cost, it's obviously going to bring a mass return of interest if you get the use case right, and if you set the agentic AI up correctly. And that's something I really want to stress at this point here. That you're not, if you do go ahead and do any AI, that you're doing it for the sake of fixing a business problem, and not for the sake of just putting AI in for the sake of using AI. There used to be a stat, it's still quite relevant, that around 80 to 90% of AI projects fail. And I think, and I put this down to the fact that a lot of people were doing AI for the sake of AI. They weren't doing it to try and fix a business problem, or AI wasn't the most suitable solution to a problem, but because it was in vogue, everyone was trying to use AI. So really, to get that return on interest, you need to make sure you engage with the right people to make sure the solution you put in place is robust and it's something you want it to do, but also they're there to kind of push back and make sure you're using AI for the right reasons. I think that's where you will get the most ton of interest by using stuff like Agentic AI. So if we're going to break down a bit further into why you should be using AI, I usually break down to three topics. What are we trying to achieve? Yeah, it's a big thing. When I do engage with clients, it really is, what do you want to achieve by via putting this AI system into place? What is the pain you're trying to get around and solve? And sometimes it may not be an AI solution. A lot of times it could be. But it really is the best place to start when we talk about these sort of things. But yeah, going back to the slides, three major points. So productivity, decision making, and scalability. They're the three major points we make when why you'd want to use agentic AI. So the first, productivity, you increase productivity via using agentic AI for task execution. So it's going to reduce your operational costs because the man hours go into you doing these tasks and the labor hours are going to go down. Mostly because you're going to shorten your delivery time, and you're going to shorten the amount of people you may throw at these tasks. And the kind of side effects as well is you're removing bottlenecks. So for the example earlier, the agentic AI where it's looking at invoices, you may have one or two people within the business that are authorized to do that kind of sign off for the invoices. If you get a robust agentic AI in place, you could have it doing the work of five or six people, kind of churning through, saying yes or no, and then putting through the no's to these authorized people to throw a more keen eye over to make sure it's correct in what it's saying, to be more critical in the responses. So reducing the workload of these key people, super important, because then it frees them up to focus on higher value, strategic and creative work. So what we've really said there is the increased productivity is twofold. One, we're getting more done. Two, the people behind the screens have more time to think about what's going on, to answer the questions like, what are we trying to achieve? To strategize, be critical of what's going on in the business. Say for the invoices, trying to dig down as to why has this been made incorrectly, and go and ask those questions and trying to educate around the business. So what it's really doing is it's freeing up members of your business to be more effective and be more proactive in their jobs because they've got more time, because we've let the robots, the agentic AI, do the robotic processes in their job. So improved decision making. This comes hand in hand because we're responding immediately to change condition anomalies. You have more time to make a choice as to how you want to rectify something. Going back to a warehouse example again, if you have a chilled warehouse where you've got stock that has to be a certain temperature, or you're going to lose a lot of money where stuff is spoiling. If this agentic AI can monitor this stuff and make decisions to alert people and say there's a possibility that something's not quite right here in anticipation, you have a lot more time to make choices in terms of where you want to move this stock to if that warehouse is not going to be suitable to you. You can proactively do maintenance there to kind of rectify and find a solution. And therefore, we can increase revenue by optimizing decisions such as pricing, inventory stuff, so go back to that warehouse example, or resource allocation. Kind of trying to get hints and tips on what is the best resource allocation. Going back to a warehouse example, you may have 4 or 5 different warehouses around the country, and many different trucks taking these stocks to customers from clients, from your suppliers. And you may want to get help in terms of how best to allocate that stuff. An agentic AI solution which knows where trucks are at certain times, how much stock you've got in certain places, can definitely give you a helping hand in terms of making choices and making decisions, and making them much more rapidly than you were before. And the bottom line, you're improving customer satisfaction. If you can do stuff quicker or more accurate, or give responses to questions from customers in a much more rapid manner, it's a win-win at the end of the day. And the final bit, scalability through parallel intelligent agents. So it's probably an uncomfortable fact for most people. But I can't understand why it shouldn't really be uncomfortable. In a second, is that Agentic AI, it supports business growth without the need to increase headcount. So if you have got a lot of work, you've got people burning out, certain people in your business have too much on their plate, and you haven't really got the budget to go and replace them or give them a bigger team, Agentic AI can scale through and take that workload on. It can be doing 4 or 5. So the invoice example earlier, it can do many of these at the same time. It can be parallel in doing so, or you could even have, if you had 4 or 5 different sites or 5 or 5 different countries. So you had people working in Spain, America, and England. You could have a chatbot, an agentic AI, which checks invoices specific to each country. So again, it scales out. And also, you get consistent execution. So it's not going to have a varying level of business knowledge. It's not going to have varying levels of customer service skills if it's working on a front end answering IT tickets or customer queries. It will always respond in a very similar fashion each time, and it'll always respond with the same answer each time as well. So you get consistency through this. You can also display workloads and reduce single points of failure. So by giving other workflows around your key person dependencies, you reduce that single point of failure. But also you could have 2, 3, or 4 of these bots doing the same job, and if one goes down, you've still got 3 of them there to do the work. Or you can fall over to a different bot that's not on at the time, but you can turn on and take over. So it gives you a lot of resiliency in your workflows as well. So before I move on to the use cases, any more questions at that point? I'll stop for a second, then we'll push on. Is everyone making sense so far? I'm not talking too fast. Um, Going too in depth. It's all good. Thumbs up. Okay, cool. So, use case for your business. So before we kind of get into it, I'm going to talk about the tech stack I'm going to use for the examples later on. And it's something I would highly recommend anyone doing. You can get a lot of training courses through the Microsoft website if you are interested in that as well, in terms of using this technology. It's called Copilot Studio. It's a low-code platform, so you can go in there and build custom AI copilots, chatbots, agents for you to use. And you can do that via using natural language, workflows, connectors. The connectors I'll go into later on. It's kind of stuff like your Zendesks, your HubSpots, Zero accounting software that all connect into these agentic AIs and give them tools to do certain jobs for you. But I think the key thing here is the low-code platform. It is, if anyone's familiar with Power Platform, very similar kind of workflow where you click and drag stuff in, make settings, and kind of show a certain flow. Except we're putting stuff in there where we want these agents to make certain decisions, and then upon having decisions, make a choice about where you want it to go. And we do have some sort of control over what it should be doing when it picks certain sections to go down of. Said earlier, it integrates your 365, your Power Platform, enterprise data securely. So as you log into Windows, use Copilot Studio, your Outlook secure, your Teams messages secure, putting stuff into Microsoft Planner is secure. You are natively getting the security of the Microsoft environment in your agentic AIs. And it also can enable rapid deployment. So you can make these bots relatively quickly. If you want something quite really low code, there are pre-made ones on the website. The invoice one from earlier was a pre-made Copilot Studio bot. Just to show real quick, the ones later on are ones I've made for the purpose of these demos today. Yeah, it can be super rapid in terms of deployment, in terms of enabling changes, super rapid as well. The platform is really powerful, and it's a great place for people to start if they want to get into agentic AI and start getting creative and effective returns for business cases via the use of agentic AI. Copilot Studio is a great way to start. So The first use case, support desk. A lot of support desks will get high volumes of inbound emails causing delays, and via these delays, you're missing priorities. So priority tickets. So stuff where stuff is really urgent for a customer, most stuff is, but when it really is urgent, kind of tagging that this is a big problem. Um, and sometimes if it's super high volume, you've got humans there. Human errors can happen, and urgent messages may not be identified quick enough. Certainly for customers, or certainly before the damage has already been done in terms of what needs to be rectified. Um, in addition to this as well, a lot of the questions might be very repetitive and require kind of copy and paste responses. So questions about passwords, should they be 8 characters long, have a plus or minus and a square in there, can I write ASCII code in there? Kind of all sorts of weird questions which are just a copy and paste from your company's documentation in terms of what a password needs to be. Time not the best spent by your support desk when there's certain urgent messages that are being missed because they're being consumed by triage rather than problem solving. And that's the big problem. And also, because there's people in there, inconsistency will come in naturally. Differences in skill, differences in temperament. If a person's had a bad day, if they've slept well, if they're feeling ill, you're going to get varying levels of service quality, but also varying level of knowledge. So you're not always going to get the same answer depending on who you speak to in the support desk. You may not get an answer at all. It may take a while for you to get an answer from these people. So if we were to put Agentic AI into this, we can get faster response times. You can reduce overall operational costs, improve the customer experience because it's going to be a rapid response and pretty much the same answer each time and the same level of customer service quality. Increase employee productivity because they're able to spend more time problem solving as opposed to triaging. And this is vastly scalable and consistent. Again, you can kind of up the amount of workflow that can go through the Agentic AI or scale it down depending on the days of the week. If you know you're going to need more to go through that Agentic AI at certain times of the week or certain times of the day. So yes. So if we break into the actual demo, this kind of workflow how the Agentic AI is going to work. So we get a customer email received into a mailbox. It's categorized as either urgent or a customer question in an example. And that is where the chatbot, the Agentic AI, is making a choice in terms of in the content of the email. Is that an urgent email or is that a customer question? There's also a I can't categorize thing outside of this where it's sends it to me in like a Teams message or an email saying, I'm not sure what it is. So I've escalated to you, my manager, so to say, to get an answer from. So if it does go urgent, it raises a ticket in Microsoft Planner. It sends an email straight to the customer, reply-wise, saying we're investigating this. And it also sends a Teams message to the relevant people. At this time, it's just me saying we've had this email raised, sent in. Something quite right is happening. Can you help, please? And the customer question is going to draft a response and a knowledge base. So this Agentic AI, I've given it a SharePoint full of proxy HR files that I generated through ChatGPT. So it's on stuff like what can I have on the machines, questions about password. So we're going to ask it a couple of questions along that line as well, and then letting the relevant people notified of what's going on. So let's go through the customer question section first. So I've got some example emails here. So this is a bit of a silly question to be asking, but I thought I'd throw it out there. If anyone's familiar with League of Legends, it's a game you can have on your computers and your laptops, played all around the world, massive multiplayer. But obviously, you wouldn't want to be installing it on the work machine. So let's see how this deals with this. So it's going to send the email off here. It's going to go to a mailbox which comes with testing, which I've set aside here. And when it gets that email, it should put something in drafts for us in a second. Wait for that to come in. So I've got to wait for the email to be received on our end, and then it will go for the process. See it's a customer question, prioritize the customer question, and then we will get a message like this, where it's saying we've had a message from said person. That's the right one. We got a message from said person. Here's the message. A response has been drafted and left your emails. So let's look at these drafts. It comes with quite a decent answer, actually. So this is what it's drafted for us off the back of that email. So that person's come in saying, can I install Agentic AI? And it's saying it needs to apply with business needs, comply with information security requirements, non-business related software games not permitted. So it's given quite a good answer there. I've come and checked. I said, actually, that's a decent answer. I click send and send that on to the sendee of that email or not. Yeah, I think it's a fair reply. Don't download games onto your work machine. But we can also send stuff like, let's go for, I'm running out of time here. So this is an urgent email. So we could send this as well. So on drafts, it should give us a draft reply in a second. So we see that's going to testing, it's doing its work. We should get a Teams message in a second. Look over here. Once it's done the stuff in the bind. So it usually takes maybe a minute or so to come through. In the meantime, I can show us Microsoft Planner. If I can move this up here. There we go. And this is stuff I've done in the past. This is my testing this morning. Just the interest of time, because we'll come through in a second. But it's raised a ticket for us, says an urgent incident. In that ticket, there will be kind of what's been asked, what's been said. And then we should have a draft email soon. This one here. Oh, that one, that's the one just sent. This is the one we want. So they've gone sent straight back saying we're investigating this. And I should have a Teams message as well. Here. Say we had an urgent message from, that's my email. It would be anyone who's emailed in because it gets their email address. Give us what's happened to that email and lets me know that they've sent an email saying we're investigating this. And it sends me a message straight away saying this needs to be investigated. And I already know, because I'm familiar with the process, that I've got a ticket in a Microsoft Planner. It could be in your Zendesk. It could be in your HubSpot. It could be in any system. Yeah. So let's go to Copilot Studio and we can look at the kind of process for this, how this works. So there's a quick view of what you're saying, what's happened, just to kind of show how easy this can be. So if we get the new email in, it's just here, setting certain settings like who you want to send it to, etc. And then breaking down when you get the email in, kind of dragging stuff out. There's a tiny bit of code there, but nothing ChatGPT couldn't help you with. And this is a small bit. So we're getting it to kind of categorize when the email comes in. So using it much like ChatGPT to get response, and then saying, I want you to use the email that's come in here to be processed, and then telling it to make a decision on what it said. So once it's categorized, put it down one of these routes to where it gets here, summarize the email first of all, and that's what gets put into the ticket. That's what gets put into the email sent to us, and it does these tasks. Okay. So any questions at that point? Probably move on to the next demo. Nope. Okay. So the next one is report writing. So I spoke about this earlier in terms of you can get reports written by Agentic AI. So you can go get the data, kind of ideate through it, make choices, analyze it, and then send that out on the fly. So why could this be a business problem for us? First of all, reporting, it can be laser intensive and can be quite repetitive. If it's kind of just checking a snapshot of how we're doing for 3 days previous to now, for the 3 days previous to that, how have our sales done? Are we down? Are we up? Are there any outstanding items we're looking at? So very boilerplate, template heavy kind of reports being made and sent out. And analysts can spend a lot of time extracting and formatting data, We don't want them to be data entry. We don't want them to do very mindless analysis. We want them to be critical of what's coming out of reports. We want them to go out, have conversations, and fix the problems that are being seen. And so reports being sent out can be delayed in terms of trying to make sure the data that's put in is available, it to be used, and you get bottlenecks in terms of creating these reports as well. And then at the end of the day, human error can come in when we're doing manual data handling. And if all these add up to make stakeholders lack timely, inconsistent insights. So we want to get reports to people quickly for these stakeholders to make decisions they need to make impacts within the business. So how can Agentic AI help this? So if it's doing this job for us, again, we're getting productivity and cost reduction. Work's getting done much more quickly, and we're enabling other members of the business that were these bottlenecks to be more effective in more high impact work items. It can work faster and give us better decision making. Again, we're getting a lot more consistency and accuracy. We can have scalability with that headcount growth, and then governance, auditability, and control. The auditability and control stuff I'll show in a second. Because with Agentic AI, you can see everything that's made as you go for that workflow I showed earlier in terms of the kind of flow diagram from earlier on. So this how this one's going to work. The agent is triggered. So in this example, if we go back to my first example of we write a report sent every Friday, an example, we could schedule this to run Monday morning at 7. So if people come into work, they know what's happened in the previous week. Are we down? Are we up? What items are we down or up on? So when the agent's triggered on that Monday morning, the information's ingested, and the agent looks in specified timeframes. So compare week on week how we're doing. And if the numbers haven't drastically changed, the report's written sent to stakeholders. If they have, the report's drafted, the team's message sent to the report owner to check to make sure the data's being fed in is full and correct, just in case something has gone wrong in terms of what's been made for the chatbot to ingest. So let's have a look at that workflow. So that all sits up here. This is flow. We can press test on this. It does take about 6 minutes to run through. So I'm not going to do it this time. And I have got an example already prepared. But this goes through and it kind of does all these items we want to use it for. And it does this what we're going to do. And it makes great decisions at certain points. But in terms of the governance and scalability, continue by saving, please. You get its run histories. So you know when it's ran, when it's succeeded. And you can click into these as well and see, well, what happened at each point, what decision was made, kind of where to get its data from, what was in the data, what was that second start date or end date, so the 10th, etc. And you can go and see the impacts of what's done, and you can click on the Agentic ChatGPT sections to see what's been input to that and what the output was of this. So again, governance, you can see what it's doing. It's not a black box, which is the major problem with a lot of AI systems at the moment. You don't see what choices are being made. By taking this Copilot Studio approach, you can have some governance, you can have some observability in terms of what's happening and what's going on. So I just want to highlight that very quickly before we move on to kind of the input and output of this process. So for this one, I kind of made up a fake Excel document of data, different categories, different owners, whether it's working or not working, notes not and values over the past 15 days. So from the 1st to the 15th, so start of the month. What the chatbot does when it's triggered, which would be, say, in an imaginary world, Monday morning at 8 o'clock, it gets this document, sets those periods, so it finds 15 days from the end date of this document. It's not just the days today, from what's available in this document. So grab these, summarize that bit, look at these up to the 10th, summarize that bit, do comparisons, but also look out for risks and stuff involved over major parts. So it could be an owner missing, that could be flagged. So slightly below forecast. It could be stuff where it's saying we should probably check on this. And you'll see when the report comes back, you get something like this from the chatbot. And it'll give a nice heading, 3-day performance report, and the 15th of the 1st, 2016. Let's make this a bit more viewable so we can analyze a bit quickly to show what consideration it's made. So it's gone a direct summary straight over the top, saying total value increased by 14.2, and then break that down into the different areas, categories we've given it. So marketing is probably the biggest drop. And then the risk concerns. So it's shown a sales overdue item owned by Taylor. So that's trying to find that Taylor item. So just imagine I'm a stakeholder. I've been shown this. I need to know I'm in head of sales. What's going on with Taylor? So I think this item here. No, there's a 15 here. Overdue. Here we go. So it's 50 grand there. He's upsold. They haven't been paid yet. So that's been pulled out. We need to make sure that's been looked at. And here in the recommended actions, the chatbot's seen and said we need to prioritize getting that overdue sale in. It's been 10 days, so that's a priority. But also monitor the operation campaign closely to mitigate identified risks. This one here. Risk campaign just needs a bit of monitoring, and then adds on as well. Review the marketing, because marketing is the biggest reason we've gone down by 14.2. So for a weekly snapshot or a free daily snapshot that's been automated for us, I think that's a really powerful and useful tool that we can do for what was possibly a day's work putting this agentic AI in place for us to use. I think hopefully that's portrayed to you the power of agentic AI and how it can apply to your businesses. And hopefully you've seen some similarities to any pain points from your business as well, as I've gone through these demos, as I've gone through this talk. I'll just drop back to the slides now to try and start wrapping this up, allow you some time to ask questions. I think I'll come back to this afterwards. I'll let you guys ask questions first, if you have any. This is what I've just said. I whistled through the last 5 minutes. Has anyone got anything to say? There's also Paul on there. Going back to my previous question. I'll answer Amber's question in a second. So if everyone answers that poll while I'm talking about this, it'd be great. How you resolve issues with poor data? I think that doesn't change between an agentic AI world and a non-AI world. If you as a person are creating a report and you're getting bad data, you can create bad reports. With agentic AI, it's the same thing. With any AI systems, if you give bad data in, it's going to put bad data out and make bad assumptions. So, with the example for that report, if you're not giving it great data, you're not giving it the full picture, it'll make suggestions which aren't correct. But if you're putting trust in your data that it's correct, you have to go back and fix it at source. Is the set answer. Lee Brownhill. I would imagine costs could quite out of hand quickly. What would be the best approach to managing aspect? Are there easy to use tools to control this? So I think this is the great bit, Lee, about it being in Copilot Studio. Much like you manage your kind of Power BI estate, your Power Automate estate, you use the Power Platform Admin Center to do this. So you can put a bidding plan in place in terms of how you'll bill for this. Usually it's a penny per Copilot token, which a simple, say for a ChatGPT, one message is so much for one back, one forward. Each task on here is assigned a certain level of credits. So you can put a cap on how much is used. You can put you get monitoring in the background for your admins in terms of how much is being used at certain points of time. But yes, it needs to be monitored to make sure people aren't overusing it. If it's with a front-facing kind of questioning bot, you need to understand how much flow is going to go through that customer question, kind of front-end support desk, before you put this in place. It could go quite high, but again, you can put a cap on this. You can scale down the amount of bots you have out there. You can scale down how much thinking it's going to put into this. In terms of response as well, you do get charged by how many words come out in the responses. So that meeting, that report I said earlier, you could say, give me 5 bullet points on that as opposed to a whole report, and that would be cheaper. So there's the kind of the more constricted kind of admin center platform where you can monitor costs and put stuff in place to stop when you get to a certain level. You can also put stuff in place where intrinsically that agent's not using much money if you're intelligent about its design. Custom AI agents. Have you got an example, Marek, in terms of what you mean by that? I would say, let's just say it's quick then. Custom AI agents. Do you mean stuff you're creating by Python automatically? Because I would say the AI agents we have here are quite custom. They can fit your demands. There are some places where you may want to use a different API, but there is a connector in there where you can connect to any API in the world. At the moment, we've got a customer who has a certain use case. There was a connector in Microsoft, so he gave me his API keys and stuff that connect to it, and I'm getting the agents to use that API. So you can use AI stuff. I haven't gone for the Python code heavy stuff here. Obviously, you can be a lot more custom, a lot more creative in your applications if you use a code-based approach. But I haven't got examples of that today because it's a very introductory session. Hope that's answered that. Okay, I get what you mean. So you want the history to be absorbed. So like with ChatGPT, it knows what you've said for the last 6, 7 questions. So that can be implemented in this Copilot Studio. If you allow the history to be used in the background of that, you can put a setting on. Obviously, it can be quite expensive to do that, but you can do it. It's not the best for the use cases though, because a lot of the ones I've given today is where you don't want to read no history, or the history it does have already embedded in. What you're talking about there is really a kind of an AI assistant kind of role where it knows what you want to know and has a history of you, and that's why it can assist you better. If you send me a message on LinkedIn, we could talk about a lot more about that, Marek, because I think we're just going over time now. But it's a very I can talk to you about more in depth if we take this a lot offline, by emails or LinkedIn chats, or we accept calls talk if you wish. Please do that. Don't think I've missed any questions, have I? Yeah, I think if there's an API you can get approach to it, there are Google Suite product connectors in the Copilot Studio, so there is availability to do that. Yes. How can we ensure that UK's language being used when emails report are being sent out using Agentic AI? So by default, these chatbots will use English if you set English as the language of the bot. But most European language and world languages are supported by the bot now. You just have to make it enabled to answer it. So if I was to, for a lot of the agentic AI I put in place, if I was to speak to it in French, Spanish, if I've not wanted to respond in that, it will understand that French, Spanish has spoken to it and then respond back saying, I don't reply in those languages. Or if you turn them on, it will reply in those languages. And they give the option to either continue the conversation in that language of spoken or English. So there are on and off settings, very easy in Copilot Studio to allow that functionality. Jay Karen. So let's wrap this up. Thank you for everyone coming today. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. My next talk is going to be 12th of March, where I'm going to use AI to do some natural language processing, we spoke about earlier, and that's understanding kind of reviews through Trustpilot. In this example would be the big demo, and how you can, at scale, understand your customers' wants and needs and feedback to customers most unhappy or most happy with what you're doing. So if it interests you and you want to go onto that, the QR code's there. It's on our Eventbrite. I look forward to seeing you all there, hopefully. Thank you.